Others respond to your inner speech. So today's Neville Goddard conversation is built on the premise of this quote here, in which he states, "The world is a magic circle of infinite possible mental transformations, for there are an infinite number of possible mental conversations. Everything is a manifestation of the mental conversations which go on within us without our being aware of them. But as civilized beings, we must become aware of them and act with a purpose." And as we discussed in Thursday's video, if a person makes bliss their purpose, what they notice is automatically an inner conversation plays out. And what they also notice is those inner conversations play out in interactions with others. As in synchronistically, they say the same things. Synchronistically, they desire to experience what we desire to experience with them, all corresponding and refracted from that state of bliss in vivid accuracy. And so I'd like to share a story in relationship with this quote here. In 2017, I decided to make flow a priority. And as we've been discussing, that when a person experiences flow, anandamide is one of the effects. Anandamide is released neurotransmitter, and anandamide is named after the Sanskrit word ananda, which means bliss. As a person experiences the anandamide release, they feel bliss. And as we've been discussing, all things express from the state of mind in which we identify with. And so I had many interesting experiences and changes in my life from that commitment. And I remember in 2018, I was saying to myself, because I was doing these partnerships, many of you know, with Iris Reading, in which I used to teach their speed reading workshops. And by the way, I've had a conversation with Paul on this channel in regards to speed reading. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link in the description to it. And so I've been doing these since 2010. And I said, wouldn't it be nice to travel for a whole month and teach these workshops? Private workshops, public workshops, because I recognize that as bliss, a symbolic representation of my bliss in relation to Thursday's video, in which I put in the title, Follow Your Bliss. So what happened was Iris Reading covered my fees, my flights, my hotels, and there were many synchronistic conversations that were occurring during those experiences. From an automatic inner conversation that was playing out that entire time, which then reflected in others saying those same things. For example, around that time I was dating and I wanted to be in a relationship. On one of the Uber rides over to LAX, the driver said to me something that I actually say in many of my videos, which was inspired by this driver. And she spoke about how she met her husband. And my hunch is that she knew this information here that we're talking about. And so she said, you should go after who you desire. Who you desire desires you. And so during these trips, I experienced many synchronistic conversations with the students, with the organizers. And even though it was 16 flights in 30 days and everything was back to back, the entire experience was effortless and blissful. And one of the things that had to be done was the renewal of my TN visa, which is a visa that I had to consult with a client in the US. And so on one of my trips back to Toronto, while I was in this deep flow, this deep bliss, and renew my visa, because the TN visa is renewed via an interview process that they do in the airport, I had the experience of what the Uber driver had mentioned. When I was out and about, I saw a woman in which I felt a deep chemistry towards her, a deep desire, and it reminded me of that conversation. And so long story short, we ended up in a relationship for a number of years. And so reflect with me for a moment. I believe that this is something we all experience. And I believe we can access that state anytime. And from the moment we access that state and we recognize that we are actually authentically that person that we desire to be in our imagination, we have amazing life experiences and we feel this deep recognition within, from the completion within, for everything exists in imagination. And from there, an automatic inner conversation plays out from that premise, which brings us through these series of events that are symbolic representations of that bliss. So it's important then, and I would like to encourage everyone to acknowledge these times where you've had these experiences and recognize that as you have had these experiences in your past, you can have these experiences again, again, and again. And actually, these experiences and everything encompassing in those experiences, the personal relationships, the business relationships, how you want to live, what you want to do, everything you desire is encapsulated in saying I am too, in imagination, anything that you would consider to be your bliss. And so he says this here, what I brought up in Thursday's video. He says, now you will understand how wise the ancient was when he told us in the Hermetica that there were two gifts which God had bestowed. These two are speech and mind. And the gift of mind and speech is equivalent to that of immortality. And so he says something very interesting here, which is related to the story that I just shared. So let's look at this here. He says, I rarely see a person alone without wondering to what conversation piece he is tied, on what mysterious track he is walking. So this part here, on what mysterious track he is walking. And so when we enter a state, we move down a series of events that lead up to the fulfillment of that state. What we desire and commit to, we allow. And to contribute to this, I recommend Thursday's video. To allow your authentic and natural self to express. Dreams are the seedlings of reality. We recognize that the seed of our vision includes all the experiences in harmony with making it happen. And by allowing ourselves to be naturally in bliss, I believe that flow and bliss is our natural way of being. We allow the seed which we plant in the garden of our mind to express naturally and reflect in this world as our vision realized. This inner conversation is true and authentic. As Steve Jobs had mentioned in his commencement speech, listen to your inner voice, which is distinct from overthinking, mental chatter. And one of the things that can be very helpful is the 7-Day Mental Diet by Emmett Fox, in which if thoughts show up in mind, for whatever the reason may be, that are not in harmony with how you truly, authentically desire to be, we allow them to pass. And as we do this, we maintain this track of inner conversation, which plays out as these synchronistic, harmonious conversations. And during that time, I saw it in my business relationships, personal relationships, friendships, family, on the flights, at the airport. And it was 1 month of joyous bliss. And this is why you've noticed over the years, and in pretty much all of my videos, I say the word flow. The inner conversations become automatic. A person feels that they have yielded completely to the bliss. And so I'll put a link in the description on the last handful of videos we've done with respects to Neville's information, in which I shared many examples of how this played out with myself and others. And here's an important thing. We want to look at our own examples. I believe that our own reference experiences are one of the greatest teachers. And every day we have an opportunity to allow ourselves to be in this ideal state of mind. And so here's one of the ways that he shows us. He says, how would I send my word to help a friend? I would imagine that I'm hearing his voice, that he is physically present, that my hand is on him. I would then congratulate him on his good fortune. Tell him that I have never seen him look better. I would listen as though I heard him. I would imagine that he is telling me he has never felt better. He has never been happier. And I would know that in this loving, knowing communion with another, a communion populace with loving thoughts and feelings. So we can think, we can feel, we can think feelingly, we can do whatever feels authentic and natural to us to allow that bliss to be. And so he says, and I would know that in this loving, knowing communion with another, a communion populace with loving thoughts and feelings, that my word was sent, and it shall not return to me void, but I shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it. As we discussed in Tuesday's video, in which I referenced William Walker Atkinson's work, love and bliss are natural ways of being. I've had thousands and thousands of conversations from doing the events, from my businesses, from this channel, and everywhere I go, I like to communicate with people. And from all these conversations, in my experience, everyone has communicated or subcommunicated that they desire love. Everyone has communicated or subcommunicated that they desire bliss. And so when we imagine ourselves and we imagine others, whatever implies, such as the suggestion we gave here, we realize that we're already complete inside. And so I remember reading one time that the Buddha had said something like, desire is the root of all suffering. And so by working with this information, we release the identification with the unnecessary suffering by committing to what we desire in our imagination and feeling that fulfillment. As we have discussed in reference to Neville's work, feeling is the secret. And so when we feel that fulfillment inside, we automatically go down a series of events which brings us to the fulfillment of what we consciously imagine. And so every day we have an opportunity to imagine what we love, to recognize that what we desire desires us back, to feel the satisfaction of that fulfillment inside, to feel that completion. And so from this premise of feeling complete inside, all the symbolic representations of it, people, experiences, happen automatically from that premise, in ways that you might know, in ways that you might not know, in which one of my consulting clients said it to me really well, who has created an amazing lifestyle for herself. She said, let go and let God. And she had mentioned that by saying that statement to herself, automatically suffering is released, and from there, everything happens automatically. So I trust you found this video to be helpful. Let's go ahead and conclude this with an auto-suggestion to further encourage. We could say, I recognize my world as the magic circle of infinite possible mental transformation. From the infinite number of possible mental transformations, I allow myself to commit to what I truly desire in my imagination and allow that to be. From this state, an inner conversation in harmony and authenticity with how I truly am plays out, in which others show up saying the same things I imagine, enjoy the same experiences that I desire in a mutually beneficial way. Others recognize the love in me as I recognize the love in them. Others recognize the bliss in me as I recognize the bliss in them. If you would like a copy of this mind map, the link is in the description. Thank you very much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.